The Monday Maydayology podcast by Hasty Fire Products, home of the Hasty Rescue Strap, the game-changing rapid intervention tool. Hi, and welcome to the Monday Maydayology podcast. I'm your host, Hank Henline, and I want to thank you guys for tuning in. This is our first episode. What you're about to hear is a conversation with a friend of mine. His name is Battalion Chief Steve Schultz, and he's got a very compelling story to tell about an incident that he dealt with 22 years ago. Before we get to that, I want to remind you guys to go ahead and follow this podcast on Spotify. Hopefully by the time you're listening to this, it's also on Apple Podcasts as well. So go ahead and give it a follow, rate the show, and share it so we can continue to grow it. Also, while you're at it, don't forget to follow my page on Instagram for Hasty Fire Products, which the actual Instagram handle, as well as on TikTok and YouTube, is at Hasty Rescue Strap, and on Facebook as Hasty Fire Products. So you can keep up with everything that I got going on there. Also, don't forget that we have the Key City Fire Conference coming up, rapidly approaching in March. It's going to be March 13th through the 16th. We've got 2 days of lectures, followed by 2 days of hands-on training, and then followed by our local union's St. Patty's Day Bash, the Clover Clash in downtown Frederick. So that's March 13th through the 16th in Frederick, Maryland. Follow them on Instagram at keycity_fire_conf, or you can visit the website keycityfireconference.com and head on over there soon because it's selling out quick. And that's all I got for you guys right now. Enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Monday Maydayology podcast. This is episode number 1. I'm your host, Hank Henline. And today I have a guy who I'm pleased to call my friend, a guy I've known for quite a few years now, Battalion Chief Steve Schultz. So Steve Schultz is joining us. He's got an incident he's going to talk about that happened to him on the job. He's been on the job for 38 years, 24 as a career fireman in the same department that I work for in Frederick, Maryland. I've known Chief Schultz. I still want to call you Captain for some reason, but I've known Chief Schultz for almost 16 years. So he actually taught my Fire 1 class when I first joined as a volunteer 16 years ago. And a few years after that, I was lucky enough to get on the job in the career department that he worked for, and he's been a friend and a mentor ever since. So Schultz, thanks for joining us.
Sure, glad to be here.
All right, so go ahead and give us an introduction, whatever you want these folks to know about you.
Honestly, you hit on all the big stuff. So I joined the fire service at 15 years old as a cadet, volunteer, and worked for another department for about 8 years or so as a full-time paramedic firefighter prior to me getting hired in Frederick in 2000. Very busy operation where I came from. Worked my way up through the ranks in Frederick County. Have am a paramedic, so spent time in doing EMS and suppression, hazmat. Have a lengthy background in all the USAR disciplines, tech rescue, confined space, high angle, all that. Was a rescue diver in a previous life, so. I got some good advice early on in my career to, branch out, try to specialize in at least one thing, if not multiple things, and get as much training and experience as you're able. And I feel like I've certainly tried to do that. So, currently I'm a battalion chief assigned to our 3rd Battalion on B shift, which is the west side of our beautiful county. And just having a great time. Love getting up and going to work in the morning.
Awesome. So, you were involved in an incident that I guess we can call it was a Mayday incident. I'm not going to tell your story. Obviously, I can't tell your story, but I've heard this story. I've been lucky enough to hear it from you a couple of times over the years, and I heard it through a mutual friend of ours who also tells the story, although usually not with as many details as you do. But anyway, if you want to get into what happened, and you can talk about maybe some things leading up to the incident throughout your career that led you there, and then what happened during the incident.
I So for a little bit of the background, uh, when I got hired by Frederick County Fire and Rescue, I had spent, like I said, 8 years, almost nine, working for another department, and at that time, nobody was hiring. There was places that were actually laying people off, and other departments who were picking those people off. So it was really, really hard to get on the job. And once I did, once I left my other job, went to Frederick County, there was just so many avenues and so many doors that just swung open, training opportunities and things like that. And I can remember we were one of my recruit class was one of the first, if not the first, recruit hiring in Frederick County where firefighter safety and survival and those Mayday skills, Mayday operations was really an integral part of our training. And at that point, even with all the specialized training I'd ever had in tech rescue, and some of the rescue schools I've been to up and down the East Coast and out in the Midwest, that safety and survival training was probably some of the most meaningful training up to that point that I think I ever had. And I just really enjoyed it, really saw the benefits of it. Um, and this was a time when you still had these notable large fires occurring in the U.S. from time to time, where you got two firefighters killed, or like in Charleston, six firefighters killed, or whatever. Um, but obviously, as things evolve over time, those large loss of life fires, or we saw our brothers and sisters getting killed in big numbers, had really kind of planed off, and if anything, were diminishing because of people out there hitting it hard with training and focusing in on firefighter safety and survival. So for me, that was a really cool thing to learn in the academy. And I can remember as a volunteer officer at the time, I would go back and at our Monday trainings from time to time, I would throw some of those skill sets in there, whether it was, buddy breathing, packaging a down firefighter and moving them. So again, just it really piqued my interest. It was something that I really held in my heart that, hey, one day I'd really like to do something with this and really, really, get involved in teaching and upping our game in the field. So that being said, like you pointed out, got hired in 2000, was on the job for almost 2 years when the incident happened. So the background is about a week and a half, 2 weeks before the day of this incident, I was actually got hurt at work. I was off and I was on light duty. And the morning of March 22nd, 2002, it was a Friday, I had a return to work physical that morning where I was hoping they were going to set me free from my light duty hell, if you will, and let me return to work that following Monday. We had Frederick County had another academy class that was graduating that same day, March 22nd, and we were getting a rookie to replace somebody we had lost through attrition. And so myself and the other guys at the station, we were pretty excited about that. Somebody new to work with and skills to develop and all that. So went to our occupational health provider about 9 a.m. that morning to get cut loose. Glory to God, they set me free. So on my way home from work, I stopped by my station, which at that time was Station 7, Middletown, west side of the county, to talk to those guys who were working and let my boss at the time know that I'd be back to work on Monday. So they were actually getting ready to eat lunch, and I hung out and was talking shop with them for a little bit. Decided I was going to eat lunch with them. And lo and behold, just as we sat down with the food at about 11:30 hours, they dispatched a box alarm for a house fire It was an 8-3 box, so Myersville's first due area. Again, far west side of the county, a very, very hard to get to area. So, in my mind, even though I was off duty, it was like, well, I just got cleared to go back to work. So, I feel like I did what anybody in my position would have done. I, ran upstairs, grabbed my gear, hopped on the engine, and off we went. So, we actually had the three career guys that were working that day, plus 2 volunteers and myself. So, rare occurrence for a weekday, middle of the day fire where we're rolling out with a stacked engine. We, busted doors and away we went. Beautiful day. I'll never forget. Just like people talk about 9/11, just beautiful blue sky. It just had that hint of, spring's right around the corner. It's 60 degrees, 65 degrees out. Just beautiful. Slight breeze. Perfect day. And, I remember we, headed off, westbound out of Middletown. And, the first due engine company was 8. They got out with their career staff on their first engine, and all of their roads to get there are very narrow, very windy, mountainous roads. And to set the picture for people, this is in an area that, we're not the Rocky Mountains, obviously. We're in Appalachia here, but we still have, and this is one of those areas, steep terrain, very narrow roads. This is, there's no fire hydrants. This could be a rural water supply operation. But very, very hard to get to with heavy apparatus. Most of the roads leading up to where the incident occurred barely accommodate, full-size apparatus. So not a lot of room to maneuver. This actually becomes a factor as the incident progresses, this accessibility issue. As we get close to the scene, we were making really good time, and it became apparent that several of the other units that had been dispatched were either hadn't responded yet because they did not have volunteer staffing, or had responded, but they responded light. So they were understaffed engines. There was at least, pretty sure the first 2 tankers actually scratched originally and had to be replaced subsequent in the incident. But as we got closer to the incident, it became apparent to us that we were going to be there first, that we were way ahead of the first due engine. And of course, we're all excited. We're amped up, we're ready to go to work. We're going to steal somebody's fire. This is going to be a great time. And at the end of the day, I'm having time in my life because I'm thinking, I'm going to get to go to a fire. I'm still off, technically. So, we're going to come back from this fire. I'm going to go home, take a shower, drink beer. Wow, this is a great day. This is going to be perfect. So we start up this road, very steep hill to get to where the incident location was. And excuse me for a second. I'm running a PowerPoint with my timeline on another computer here. So, as we get close, there's
preparation.
Yeah, indeed. There's some back and forth on the radio with the dispatcher about whether or not the driveway is marked. And they're throwing an address out, which is actually the neighbor's house across the road. So, in the middle of this, the first arriving officer was a volunteer chief officer from Myersville at the time. He arrived on scene, but never gave an initial on-scene report, never gave any layout, water supply directions, really just no size up at all. So we have no information. He's just on the scene at silence. I'm in the back, officers up front, the driver, and they're coming up the road, and they see the other address across from another driveway, and there's this discussion about, well, do we drop a line? Do we not drop a line? How far back is it? And we're looking down this driveway, and I mean, for 1,000 feet, we don't even see a house. It's just a driveway down the side of the mountain into the woods. So we make, I say we, but some officer makes a decision. We're going to not lay a line. We're going to have whatever tanker gets out come back the driveway to nurse us. So in the middle of this, my officer is calling the duty officer who's on the scene multiple times on the radio. No response. Hey, do you want us to drop a line? No response. Hey, do you have a size up report for us? No response. So, now the engine officer is forced to make decisions blindly with just a very little bit of information in order to make something happen. Down the driveway we go. The driveway is almost 2,700 feet long or something like that. Has 3 switchbacks in it. So you can't even, you can't see the house from the road at all. And until we broke out of the third switchback, was the first opportunity we got to see the house. And initially, didn't see anything. And the way the driveway wrapped around this property, we're actually pulling up on the Bravo Charlie corner. Driveway kind of sweeps back past the Charlie side of the house and wraps up on the Delta side at a garage. Decent sized house. It was a custom built house. In fact, the homeowner was a general contractor, and that's what he did, was build houses. And had kind of like that barn style roof. And essentially the center part of the house was, I'm gonna say 2.5 stories with attic space, and then on legitimately what would have been the Delta and Bravo side, there was a 1.5 story addition, if you will, going off of both ends. So as we're coming up to the house, initially I'm thinking, well, there's nothing to this. We can't see any smoke. There's, it looks like normal conditions. And just as we come around the house, out of the corner of my eye, I can see what looks like very, very light gray, very small amount of smoke coming from where the 1-story portion of the house on the Bravo side meets the 2-story outside wall. I see just a little bit of smoke there, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe something is on fire. Excuse me. So for us, we had prided ourselves at Station 7 that a lot of the volunteers there were on the job down in Loudoun County. And they had also came back with a lot of great training, great ideas from their jurisdiction where they worked at. And we kind of prided ourselves in the fact that, if you were on the engine, you were combat ready. All your PPE on, SCBA, hand tools, hand light, everything. You were ready to go to work. Every position had an assignment. Everybody knew what they were going to do. In addition, because we were riding so heavy that day, we had, in the back of the engine, had already worked out a plan of who was doing what and, who was going to take what tool and that kind of thing. So we pulled up. We immediately stretched the line. Myself and at that time, firefighter, Jay Morgan, who also went on to be a battalion chief and retired a few years ago. Him and I were the search team. So, gathered tools, made entry at the front door off the porch. The incident commander was standing on the porch, no radio, no PPE. He's talking to whom I would find out later was the homeowner. And really just, he doesn't even say anything to us like, hey, the homeowner's reporting this, or hey, this or that. Because there was just a bit of information there that the homeowner had given him that nobody knew anything about until much later in the incident, that probably would have made a difference about where we were going to look for fire. So in our minds, where we saw the smoke on the exterior of the home, to me it put the fire up on the second floor, on like that exterior wall, like in a void space or something like that. So Walked inside the house, just perfect, crystal clear vision, just like us sitting here. There's no smoke. There's no, odor. And I'm saying that we had our face pieces on. We hadn't gone on air yet. But went up the main steps, which was right in front of the front door, and top of the steps, there was kind of like this open. I'm not sure how to say it, but like it wasn't a hallway. The walkway was kind of like a catwalk that wrapped around the center open area in the home, with bedrooms and bathroom and all that off of that elevated catwalk, if you will. So we get up there and immediately bang the left, and a little bit of smoke out in the hallway area or on that walkway area. And we went into the room that we felt was at that location of the house where we'd seen the smoke on the outside. And like I said, there was a little bit of a smoke condition. It was hanging up around the ceiling. It's still pretty light. I mean, we wouldn't have had to been on air at that point. We went on air, I don't know, after just a few minutes of being in the room. And like for me, it was more because I didn't want my regulator banging on stuff, and I didn't want it just dangling free either. So I went on air, Jay went on air, and we start working around this room. Now the room was an extra bedroom, and these folks have been using it for like storage. So lots of furniture, lots of boxes, lots of stuff stacked up. I'm going to stop short of calling it Collier's Mansion conditions because really it was just an extra room that they were using for storage. So it wasn't like it was unkept or anything like that. But it was so tight in there, we basically had to make kind of cow paths around the room to get to a wall on this side or a window over here to give us some room to work. So as you go in this room, off the walkway, if you will, there's a window straight ahead, and then making a left around some boxes and a bed and whatnot, there's another window facing what would have been the alpha side of the house. So Jay's working his way over there. I'm working my way along the wall, and like my first instinct was to open that window up to vent this little bit of a smoke condition while we try to figure out a source. So as soon as I opened the window up, smoke immediately dissipated. There's a breeze coming down the mountain and coming straight in that window. And just open the room up real nice. And again, we're moving boxes and can't find fire. Can't find the source of the fire. It's like, well, maybe it's in the wall. Maybe it's over here. Maybe it's over there. So, again, move some more stuff around. Start putting inspection holes in the wall. Can't find anything. So I got a hand light and I'm shining into these inspection holes, and other than a little puff of smoke every now and then, there's no evidence of fire. So I didn't notice it at the time until I thought back on it, and it's certainly a takeaway in my PowerPoint as something to pay attention to. But we were so focused on working, what we didn't notice is the 2 bedroom windows were open in this room. And like I said, initially it vented the smoke out perfectly. But every time the breeze stopped blowing, the smoke condition would come back. And each time it came back, it was a little heavier than it was before. So there's definitely a fire here. There's definitely something burning. We can't find the source. Very perplexing, By now the attack line has made it upstairs. My officer, his 2 linemen are there, and I'll go to the bedroom door. I say, "Hey man, don't bring the line in here yet. We can't find the source of the fire. There's so much crap in here. Last thing I wanted was 5 of us in there tripping and over boxes and an attack line that we might not need in that location." So he's good with it. And at that point, he turns and has one of the other firefighters, Jason Atkins, return to the engine to get thermal imager. So good heads up call, in my opinion. Hey, got guys working, can't find the seat of the fire. Use your technology and be smart about it. So as I turn to walk back in the room, again, I'm looking straight out that window, and when I looked out the window, that's when I saw there was a little bit of fire coming out from underneath a couple of shingles on the roof below us. So I was like, well, crap, the fire's below us. It's down in the first floor, burning in the ceiling. Well, obviously, I'm a little disappointed by this because in my mind, I'm thinking that the engine that we beat there should be pulling in any second, you know. And at this point, we're maybe 10 minutes into this, so in my mind, all these other units are checking on the scene. The reality was we were dispatched as the third due engine company arrived first. So again, this is all playing in my assumption of what's going on and my perception of where we're at in the incident. Well, when I see this fire, I turn back around, report it to my officer, who he's calling the incident commander on the radio, say, "Hey, fire's below us. It's it looks like it's burning in that roof or ceiling area of the first floor bump out on the Bravo side." See, he's thinking the same thing I am. He's thinking that Engine 82's pulling up on the scene. They're going to stretch a line into the first floor, open that ceiling up, and knock that fire down pretty quick. And based on what I'm seeing, like, this is a small, manageable fire. I think, so many times over the years running that event through my mind, I honestly think that if we'd have backed our line back downstairs, hooked that ceiling open, we'd probably put that fire out 25, 50 gallons of water, maybe. And that'd have been the end of it. We wouldn't even be having this presentation. But we made the decision, and I say we because myself, Vern Wachter, Jay Morgan. Vern Wachter was the sergeant at the time, the officer at the time. That would leave that line in place to be defensive if need be. And again, we're assuming that the other engine's stretching the line. We have no idea that they're not there. So as my officer's calling on the radio, talking to the incident commander, say, "Hey, we need somebody to stretch a line on the first floor." He's simply, "Okay," that's the extent of it. Like, well, there's nobody else here, or hey, back your line around, like completely, just yeah, okay. So again, that went on to solidify that there was other people there, other units operating, and the reality was there wasn't. We were still there by ourselves. So what seemed like an eternity went by, and it's like the smoke's getting heavier, the smoke in the room's getting heavier, the fire condition below us, I can see where it's burning through the roof, is starting to become more serious. And we talk again, and I'm going to say Lieutenant Walker, but the sergeant says to Jay Morgan, he says, "Hey, man, go downstairs, open that ceiling up, and see what in the heck is taking these guys so long to get that line in there, and, see what you guys can do with that." So now the only two people left in the room are myself and Lieutenant Walker. I didn't know it. I remembered that he had sent Firefighter Atkins go get a thermal imager. I completely forgot that the other lineman was still on the line in the hallway right outside the door. Completely no idea until much later in the incident. So we're in there just basically socializing, waiting for this fire to go out, because in our minds, the fire's going to go out any second. We went from this high up here of, "Hey, man, we're stealing somebody's fire," to, no, we're not, darn it. And the smoke is pretty thick. Like, it's starting to bank down pretty good in this room. And again, keep in mind, there's 2 windows open venting this room. And we're to the point now where you can't see your feet if you're standing up. I kept going through my mind. I'm like, what in the world is taking them so long to put this fire out? Like, it gets to the point where we're down on the floor. It's starting to get warm in the room, and Lieutenant Walker calls command and says, "Hey, you're gonna need to get a truck company up here to open this roof up, where it butts up against this building. We're gonna burn this joint down. Like this is like ridiculous." And it was at that point where Incident Command finally painted the picture for us on the inside that, well, I don't have any other units here. You're gonna have to wait. But no other units. Like, where's everybody at? Well, what's going on as a sidebar to this is those narrow mountain roads. The second due engine and the first, what would have been the first due tanker, missed the driveway because it wasn't marked. So they proceed on up the mountain, and they go about a mile and a half, where they come nose to nose with what should have been the first due engine coming down the mountain. Well, now they have no choice except to back up a mile and a half down this narrow, winding road with this other engine pushing them down the hill at about 5 miles an hour. In the meantime, the first due truck had started up the road at the lower end. They're told on the radio to hold their position while these other units are backing down. Excuse me. So these units are all hemmed up because of the roads. They're understaffed. In our minds, these other units are there. And when that incident commander called us on the radio and said, "Hey, yeah, I just don't have anybody here yet," we had no idea. And this certainly would have changed our plan of attack on the front end. So Lieutenant Walker and I are talking, and it's starting to get pretty hot in the room. And like, we recognize the fact that we have to do something right now, or we're gonna have to back out of here, because like, we're not doing anything. We're just sitting here twiddling our thumbs at this point with a charged attack line, 10, 15 feet away from us in the hallway that we're not doing anything with, and this freaking house is burning down. So based on the roof construction and the construction of the house, I come up with this idea that, well, if I open the wall up down close to the floor, we should be able to access that other void area and maybe get a stream of water in there to darken that fire down. So I talked to Lieutenant Walker. He agrees. So I get in a position, and again, we're scooting boxes and stuff out of the way. There's no room to work. And I get in a position low to the floor. I've got my irons there, and I start working on this wall. And I remember the homeowner had used, it was like T111 exterior siding, wood siding, as it looked like wainscoting on the walls. Yeah, so this stuff is like, it's not coming apart easily. And I'm now standing up, so I have room to swing my Halligan bar to try to get this broke open. And I managed to break like a corner off of one of the sheets. And I got my hand in there and started yanking. And when I pulled back, a big piece of this opened up. And immediately it was game on in this room. And what I mean is, like, it was warm, getting hotter in the room before. Smoke was thick, to now all of a sudden there's extremely high heat coming out. I'm getting burned, my sides of my face, my ears. I can feel my shoulders getting burned, and I'm fully turned out. So hood up, whole bit. The only thing I didn't have was didn't have my ear flaps down on my helmet, but I am getting burned, and it is pretty unbearable at this point. So I'm telling
So is this
Vern.
pushing out of the wall like a blowtorch?
Well, so there was no visible fire yet. It was just, and as best I could tell, the
Okay, just
smoke
the
was
heat.
coming out under pressure. Like, it was definitely under pressure at that point. Um, I'm yelling for him to bring the attack line up, and while I was working on the wall, he had kind of crawled back our little cow path there, made a right turn, went to the doorway, got the attack line from firefighter Russ Gillespie, who was the other lineman, and he brings it back in there and gets it in position. So when I get this wall opened up, I start getting burned. I'm like yelling at him. I'm like, man, open the line up, put water on the fire, dude. Like, I am getting burned and I'm miserable. And he says, I don't have any pressure on the line. What was charged a minute ago? Well, we think what happened was there was a kink in the line. He calls back out, talks to the pump operator. Pump operator says, hey, man, I'm giving you 160. It's an inch and 3/4 tack line, yada, yada. And we're just not getting it. So we know there's a kink in the line someplace. And I'm telling Lieutenant Walker, I'm like, dude, I've got to get on the floor. I've got to get behind you so I can get down on the floor because there was so much crap in the room. I couldn't even kneel down. I couldn't fit with my SCBA on and everything. So I had to climb kind of up on this bed and over top of him to get to a position where I was on the attack line behind him to not just back him up, but so I'd stop getting burned because I am freaking miserable at this point. So I'm telling him, I'm like, dude, we can't stay here. Like, this is freaking miserable. And he's like, yeah, no, we got to back out of here. So I crawl a couple of feet back in the room to our little turn that we had made in all these boxes and everything, and I'm pulling line back, and I'm kind of down on one knee, one leg up, so I can pull line. And I'm shoving it around the corner out towards the door, and I'm about middle of this wall, which I think actually later we found out was like a closet or something. But I'm in the middle, probably 6-8 feet from the door to my left, probably another 6-8 feet to the window on that wall to my right. Lieutenant Walker's straight ahead of me. He's about 10 feet with the nozzle. We're pulling back, and it was weird. Like, I got this overwhelming feeling that something bad was about to happen. And I don't know how else to describe it, but I could feel and basically hear like a clock going in my head, and it was ticking, and it's like, we've got to get out of here. We've got to get out of here. And I'm trying not to panic or sound panic. So as Lieutenant Walker's coming back towards me, I'm like, yeah, you're doing good, man. Just keep coming, keep coming. I'm feeding line, trying to get line to go out the door. And again, I completely forgot that Firefighter Gillespie's in the hallway, so he's actually taking line up as I'm sending it back. But he's around the corner. I couldn't see him anyways because smoke was so thick. And just as Lieutenant Walker gets to me, he went to lift up off the floor so he could turn around because, again, it was so tight, so narrow in there. He's kind of a big guy. He couldn't get turned around. And as he lifted off the floor, everything, and I mean everything, turned to fire. But at the same time, I couldn't get beyond the amount of force that this had. And because it was that, like you're at a fireworks display and one of those big shells goes off close to you, or for people in the military who maybe were in close proximity to some kind of high ordnance, high explosive ordnance going off. But I mean, just a deep, deep thump in your chest, and it had so much force it threw me face forward on the floor. And in my mind, like I knew the room just flashed over. I knew that. But I couldn't get beyond the amount of force. So what I didn't understand at the time until a little later was that there was a backdraft that occurred. That the flashover is essentially the ignition of the backdraft occurring. So at this point, like everything is on fire. And now for a hot second I could see really well until my face piece started to melt. So it immediately is bubbled up, starting to fail. I can only see out of the very, very bottom of the lens on the left side, and I'm yelling for Lieutenant Walker. I can hear him. He's down on the floor to my left. And I know he's pretty close, and I had to keep tilting my head back to try to see where he was. And when I finally located him, like his gear's on fire, his helmet's on fire, just everything is fire. It looks like if I said everything was water and you had your eyes open or had swim goggles on underwater, that's what it looked like. It just looked like we were drowning in fire. And your mind does weird things when everything seems to slow down in those situations. And I remember thinking, wow, so that's a flashover. And then the next thought was, man, if we're not careful, we're gonna die here. And it was about 3 minutes later, or 2 minutes later, if that the reality sat in. Is like, no, we're gonna die here. You know, it goes from that almost as if it's a joke, you know, guys doing something stupid, to no, this is legit. We're gonna die. Um, I'm yelling at Lieutenant Walker, because he had the nozzle. We're backing out with this attack line, and I'm yelling at him like, for the love of God, open the nozzle up. Let's start knocking some of this fire down. And he keeps saying, I don't have the nozzle. The nozzle's gone. I'm like, no. You have the nozzle. You have it. It's you had it in your hand. He's like, no, you don't understand. It's gone. No, I don't understand. Like, I'm not picking up what he's saying. So it occurs to me, it's like, we're not getting out of here. We're just not getting out of here. I'm like, you need to, the door's straight ahead of you. Keep crawling towards the door. He says, the door's gone. I'm like, no. It's right here. It's on my left hand side. It's like, 6-8 feet that way. Just keep on crawling. He's like, the door's gone. Again, I can't see. And even when I'm tilting my head back, I'm just seeing fire. I can see him, a few feet away from me, but I can't see anything beyond that. Well, what he sees is most of the roof and attic and second floor have collapsed, and the doorway it's just physically not there anymore. So in my mind, it's like, well, he doesn't have a nozzle to put water on the fire. We can't use the door to get out. It's like, man, transmit a mayday, man. We need a routine. And he says, the radio's gone. Jokingly, if I've told this story or given this presentation before, I always tell people, that Lieutenant Walker, you can't give that guy anything because he loses everything. So he's done lost a hose line, a door, and a radio all within about 30 seconds. But the reality was, there was so much fire that the radio was destroyed in the flashover. My mind is just
at this point in time, was this when you guys only had one radio per unit or per crew?
yeah. So
Okay.
it was right on that cusp of there had been some talk within the county of trying to get a radio for every 2 firefighters. So if you were a 6-man engine company, you'd have 3 radios, one per 2-person team. And honestly, Hank, I can't remember if we had that many radios at the time or if it was just one per unit. I feel like we did. We just didn't have radios for every riding position. So there's a possibility
Okay.
that Jay Morgan may have had, if we had additional radios, he may have had that other radio. But remember, he had gone downstairs in what at that time we thought was to show the other engine where we wanted their line at, and help them open sealing up. But yeah, and that's definitely something to think about. So for us in Frederick County, this is one of those incidents where uh, better turnout gear, better Nomex hoods, uh, additional radios for riding positions. Really, this is one of those incidents that kind of catapulted that forward, made those things a more of a priority if you will, as opposed to a novelty, you know. So, yeah, good question.
Yeah.
Yep. Um, yeah, so no hose line, no radio. At this point, we're alone, and I'm sitting there thinking that I can't believe that I'm gonna die. I just like in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, you know, I felt like there was just no point in it. And what I mean is, we weren't in there trying to make a rescue. We weren't, you know, the people were out of the house. This is a room that nobody cared about, full of stuff that they had forgotten about. You know, this wasn't, you know, we were fighting to defend a home from impinging fire. We weren't in there searching for a trapped child or anything. And as dumb as that sounds, in that split second, I just could not come to terms with that. And I was just, I can't believe this is how we're going to die. At that point, I kind of jokingly to myself thought, man, we're going to have to jump out the window. And I say jokingly because I, in my mind, again, recognized that a flashover happened. I did not recognize at the time that a backdraft occurred and that there was a collapse and all this other crap. So in my mind, I don't want to be that guy. I'm 2.5 years on the job, and the last thing I want to be is the drama queen by jumping out a window when we could just crawl out the door and be out of it. But I came to that realization. Well, if we can't get out the door and we can't transmit a mayday, we don't have a choice. Like, we've got to jump. So for people listening to this, people who have listened to this story presentation, I think it's easy to get lost sometimes on the fact that, well, yeah, in firefighter safety and survival, we teach people to do window bails and we teach people to do this and that. And it's real easy to see those skill sets in very, very general terms. But my problem is my face piece is failing as this, as time's going by. I can smell plastic. I can't see out, and I recognize the fact that, yeah, we're going to have to jump out the window, but the problem is the windows are fairly high off of the floor, and I'm terrified to get up off of that floor because in my mind, the minute I stand up to try to get out that window is the minute my face piece will fail completely. I'm convinced that I'm going to burn to death, and I understand I'm going to die. I just, for the love of God, how long is this going to take and how bad is this going to hurt was what was going through my mind. I did not want to get off that floor, but also recognized that there was no way Lieutenant Walker was going to be able to get out if I didn't go first because he wasn't going to be able to get by me to get to the window. So he's to my left. I can't remember at the time. I've thought about this over the years. I can't remember if, I said something to him other than window or if we talked about going out the window. I honestly don't remember, but I recall him getting turned around, and I told him I was going or whatever, and it took every ounce of strength I had physically and mentally to stand up and head for that window. And I knew how hot it was on the floor. And boy, I tell you, I did not want to stand up because I thought, man, if it's this hot on the floor, how hot is it going to be when I stand up? So I did. I tried to do it as quick as I could. And I had mentally, thought about how I was going to do this. And in my mind, I'm just going to stand up. I'm going to take 3 really big steps and dive out the window. And I stood up, took 3 really big steps, and ran into the wall next to the window. So now I'm panicked because I can't find the window. And I'm feeling around for it, and I can't see. And I'm trying to find the window frame. I finally find it off to my left. So I swing around And just as I get into the window, now I'm concerned because I'm like, wow, I don't know if the roof's below me still. Like, that's where the fire had originated. Like, there's this much fire in this room, the roof's probably gone. So there's a good chance I'm jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire. But I also recognize that without being able to see, I didn't have a choice. Like, if we stayed there, we were going to die. In my mind, at least I have a shot of survival. We have a shot of survival if we get out that window. If the roof's still there, we can win. We can win this. We can, we can survive this. If the roof's not there, then we're gonna die one way or the other. But if anything, of all the skills and everything I learned when we went through our safety and survival training, it was that fight to live, that mental mindset was one of those things. I didn't have the time to look for or deploy, a bailout rope or bailout kit. And at that point, given the fire conditions, I'm not sure I'd been able to. Anyways, we don't have radio communication. We don't have any of this. So I just knew that, hey, if it's my time to go, that's fine. I'm gonna die on the job that I love. But man, I'm not gonna lay down and die. I'm gonna go out fighting, and this is it. So I made that decision to go, and I basically didn't really launch out the window. I basically allowed myself to kind of fall out the window, and wasn't a big drop. It was only I don't know. It was a couple of feet down to that other roof. But boy, as soon as I hit that roof, you could definitely tell it was spongy. It wasn't going to take much abuse. So now I'm trying to feel my way down to get down low on the roof, and I'm trying to look back to see if Lieutenant Walker's coming out the window. Still can't see. So I got my head tilted way back, and I'm looking and looking, and I finally see him at the window, and I can hear him yelling, and I'm yelling at him, and I have no idea what he's yelling about. Like my mind, that part of my brain just wasn't working. I couldn't process things. I couldn't process what he was saying. I couldn't process, couldn't connect the dots on the things I was experiencing or seeing or whatever. And it's hard to describe other than to say that I was struggling mentally, struggling physically. He finally comes out the window, and then the roof shifts. So I'm like, oh, here it goes. And again, he was not a petite ballerina kind of guy. So I, on one hand, want to crawl back up the roof to try to help him, but on the other hand, I'm afraid to get out in the middle of the roof because I don't think the roof's going to support our weight. So I find the edge of the roof, and I can hear other people yelling. I can't see them. And I'm trying to make a decision of, am I jumping or should I hang down? I'll try to hang down from the spouting. I get myself worked around there. And I remember that I'm out of the fire, but I'm afraid to let go because I don't know how far down it is to the ground or what's underneath of me. I'm like, that's the kind of luck I would have. I'd survive all that, survive jumping out the window, survive, this other roof from collapsing, and jump off the roof, probably get impaled on a fence or something, But as soon as Lieutenant Walker got to the edge of the roof, that's when I decided I was gonna go ahead and let go and fall to the ground. And fortunately for me, it was only about a 6 foot, 8 foot drop to the ground. And I remember hitting the ground. I remember hearing him hit the ground off to my left. And immediately, man, there's people all over us. And I felt like I was fighting for my life with these people, And I'm like, get off me. And what I don't understand is, because I can't see it, they're trying to drag us out of the collapse zone because the building is now well involved in fire and coming down. And but in my mind, it wasn't. It was the same. It was the same house, looked the same as when we went into it in my mind. So once they dragged us out of the collapse zone, I'm trying to get my face piece off, and the buckles and everything, and the straps are melted and all fused together. And they're fighting with me. They're fighting with my SCBA. I finally get my face piece off. And I can't believe I can't believe what I'm seeing. The whole second floor, Charlie's side exterior wall was laying in the backyard of the home. The picnic table's on fire. There's debris on fire all over the yard. Most of the center section of the home had collapsed, at least down to that second floor level. There's heavy fire blowing out the end of the place, and like it's surreal. Like I felt like I was in a science fiction movie. I'd just been transported from this beautiful, perfect day to what looked like hell on earth. And I wanted to crawl over to Lieutenant Walker, and I got him, got my arm around him. Dude, are you okay? And his first words were, "Where's Russ at?" Russ Gillespie, the other firefighter who was on the second floor, was. Well, like I said, we were so focused in that room on finding fire, opening up, doing this and that, I completely forgot he was up there. So, in Lieutenant Walker's mind, Russ Gillespie and firefighter Jason Atkins were both on the second floor and now trapped under this collapse. In reality, what had happened was when Lieutenant Walker went out to get the hose line to bring into our room where we were working, he had ordered firefighter Gillespie to go downstairs with firefighter Morgan to help him stretch a line, open up downstairs. Firefighter Atkins, he came back to the second floor with a thermal imager, and he has a pretty unique story about that. Fortunately, he ends up escaping, but again, like grace of God, right? So he's on the second floor, and his version of the story is he comes back with the thermal imager. By the time he gets to second floor steps, or excuse me, second floor landing, smoke's banked the whole way down the floor. He's zero visibility. He makes the first turn to come down the hallway towards towards the room we're in, and he's following the hose line. And he said he stopped a couple of feet in front of the door to turn the thermal imager on, and it takes a minute for it to come up and all that. And he said that, in fact, this was part of his interview at the fire marshal's office. He said that when he turned it on and held it up, the screen went white, and he thought there was something wrong with it. He said he held it back down to the floor, held it up again, the screen was white again. He didn't recognize that, hey, the temperature's over 1,000 degrees and you got white out on the screen. And the next thing he knows, he wakes up, he's unconscious at the bottom of the steps being removed by, in fact, by firefighter Russ Gillespie and firefighter Morgan. So we, in my mind, we just left guys inside. We jumped out a window, knowingly, unknowingly, however you want to look at that. And we left guys inside, and that haunted me for a long time. Sometimes in the middle of the night, still haunts me. But fortunately, that wasn't the case. They were out, albeit firefighter Gillespie, firefighter Morgan had minor injuries. They were actually standing on the front porch when the backdraft occurred, were blown off the porch out to the yard. Firefighter Atkins, he was removed. Initially, he was unresponsive when they made an attempt to go back in to get us. They found him at the bottom of the steps. They drag him outside. He regains consciousness, so he has some minor injuries. And then, of course, Lieutenant Walker and I backs out of the house, end up with some injuries too. But very troubling to when you're in that situation, you're looking at this place that you just got out of, and on one hand, you're so thankful that, and maybe in disbelief that you even survived something like that, and then on the other hand, uh, man, we left guys inside. Like I couldn't believe it. At that moment, I'd rather have been dead. And I can remember there was a crowd of people back there with us from a number of units, and I remember getting up and trying to get down to where the engine was in the driveway because nobody has transmitted a mayday yet. I've heard nothing on the radio. There's no like like other than the people who are eyewitnesses to everything that happened. Like to me, nobody is doing anything. So I get to the engine, and I remember the engine operator, just a sheer look of terror in his face, and he says, "Where's everybody at?" I said, "Lieutenant Walker and I are out. We're on the Charlie side." I said, "But the rest of the engine crew's trapped." And the look on his face, it gives me chills just sitting here talking about it now. Because, that guy, he drove that engine to the scene with 5 other guys in it. And that look on his face told you that he knew he was driving that engine back to the station by himself. And it was at that moment he never said a word, just absolute white. You just see the color run out of that guy's face. And he turned to the engine and got on the air horns to sound the evacuation, pull everybody out of the house. So fortunately, it was within about a minute, 2 minutes of that I learned that Firefighter Gillespie, Firefighter Atkins, and Firefighter Morgan were on the alpha side and been accounted for. So that was where I feel like the adrenaline finally stopped pumping through me, and I could finally take a breath. But yeah, it's I knew that I could. I had just started becoming an instructor at about that time, and I kind of let it ride for a while about what I wanted to do with it. But I knew as I gained more and more experience as an instructor that I wanted to use that for educational purposes for this kind of thing right here that we're doing today, or for safety and survival training, or even just fire behavior and fire dynamics, because these are all things that hopefully people take away from my experience. Now obviously situations are unique, and that doesn't mean it's not going to happen tomorrow or next week or whatever. But yeah, if I can use that to help educate people, I'm all about it. So that's about it in a nutshell.
Oh yeah, that's the whole
I've
point,
got a
right?
timeline, so I mean, like, if you have questions, I can definitely run through different things in my timeline. Um,
So how long do you think it took from that moment when you realized you were experiencing a flashover till you were outside and people were down dressing you, taking your gear off? How long was that?
so not very long at all. I think grand total, I'm going to say roughly 8 to 10 minutes. Um, Now I've had people, give me shit in the past because they hear this story and they're like, "Good Lord, it's an hour and a half presentation." It's like, well, yeah, because there's other things, other aspects in here that I'm trying to get across that people understand. But from the time, the flashover occurred, and this is a rough estimate, and I'll explain here in a minute how I came up with this number. But from the time the flashover occurred to the time that I'm going to say that the evacuation signal was sounded, I'm going to say roughly about 12 to 13 minutes. So I think 8 minutes from the time flashover occurred to people yanking PPE off of it. Now, we came up with that, looked at a couple of things as I was putting this information together for my PowerPoint. I went back through the fire marshal's investigation, and I pulled all their notes once they allowed me to have them. And I looked at, I also had the radio traffic transcribed from that event. Now, I used to have a recording of it. Unfortunately, I do not have that recording any longer. But those key points on the timeline I had hit. So that number was based off of uh, Lieutenant Walker's last radio transmission to command regarding the truck company that opened the roof. We guesstimate, and this was based on some of the UL information pulled off of the SCBA. There was about 3 minutes after that where you see on the what the SCBA had, where it sees this huge spike in temperature, which, looking at it, so at the time we had the MSAs, and the MSAs had a rate of rise detector basically built into them for a high temperature alarm.
Okay.
And one of the things, yeah, and I didn't mention it when we were talking about this, but so at the time when I got to the floor behind Lieutenant Walker, he's coming towards me. Right before he tries to turn, and right before the flashover occurs, I thought I heard my high temperature alarm go off, but it didn't stay. It kind of whistled one time, and that was the extent of it. Well, the reason for that, and again, this was part of that equipment analysis and investigation that they conducted later, was that the temperature rose so sharply and so quickly that by the time the high temperature alarm sounded, it was already beyond its threshold and immediately shut off. You know, so based on that radio transmission, the data they pulled off in that case that MSA, and when I believe it was Ricky Lawson, he was working at Station 8 that day on overtime, and he was the officer on 8-2. He makes a he makes a report on the radio that he's got firefighters jumping out the windows, and it's shortly thereafter that he is one of the first ones that makes contact with me pulling PPE. So they're actually, I actually put some science to that to come up with that number. And I got to tell you, man, like on one hand, 8 minutes isn't a lot of time, but I'm here to tell you, 8 minutes is a freaking eternity when you're in the process of dying in that situation, and I
Yeah,
feel
for
like
sure. I can
anytime I'm
believe that.
teaching, yeah, I feel like, and as you well know as an instructor too, like it's one of those things that's hard to get across to students to make them understand that, you know, that everything comes time condensed on one hand, but on the other hand, man, it is the longest 8 minutes of your entire life because it's the end of your life pretty much. So, yeah. What else you got, bud?
Did you guys ever have any thought when you realized that there was no other engine company there yet? Did you have any thoughts of moving the line underneath down to the first floor somewhere versus trying to open the wall up and attack it from there?
Yeah, so it turns out I did, right? And I'm saying that not to sound selfish or anything. In fact, actually, to kind of highlight, Lieutenant Walker really, just like you would expect from a really good officer, he was like 3 steps ahead of me, And what I mean is, so when we'd had that conversation about not being able to fire or find the fire. He sends Adkins to go get the thermal imager. We go back to work trying to find this fire. Eventually sends firefighter Morgan down uh, to what we thought was tell the second engine where to stretch that line. Well, once he realizes, and again, I'm working, I'm doing my thing in the room, and I'm focused. I'm very laser minded, focused on that task. So he's having this conversation behind me at the door. And this is part of the reason I didn't realize Firefighter Gillespie had left. Well, instead of having us take that line back down, what Lieutenant Walker did was a very tactically sound decision. He tells Gillespie, go downstairs, pull a second line, go in that first floor with them guys and get that fire. You know, so uh, this is in progress. Even up to when the flashover occurs. In fact, Firefighter Gillespie and Firefighter Morgan are actually on the front porch putting their face pieces back on with the attack line at their feet. So like they had already stretched it to the door.
Okay.
They're getting ready to make access, go in that first floor to go, to go get that fire. Um, yeah. So again, Lieutenant Walker with his thinking, like he's gonna put two lines of service because he has the personnel to do it. We're going to leave that line on the second floor again to remain defensive and catch any fire. And if you think about it, in a perfect world, if we'd back that line downstairs, open the ceiling up, put that fire out, at some point we'd still need another line upstairs. So again, like his mind is
Sure.
at that point, like he's 3, 4 steps ahead in this incident, thinking these things out. It's just, the fire didn't give him a chance to develop his plan, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure does. You talked a little bit about your previous training and how the safety and survival training was kind of, I guess, the newer thing at the time, right? For those who haven't caught the timeline, remember this was 22 years ago, right? So,
Right.
RIT training, survival training, really was starting to actually take off around that point. So,
Right.
do you think that training, that initial safety and survival training that you had, helped in this event? And if it did, great. If it didn't, like what other skills do you think you could have been taught previous to this incident that might have helped you?
So, I've had people ask me this question over the years, and I absolutely think it helped. Now, I say that a little tongue in cheek because usually what I get from other people is, well, how to help? You didn't use any skills, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you weren't through the floor, you weren't doing the Denver drill, you weren't doing, how to help? You jumped out a window to survive, and yeah, you're not wrong. I didn't have time to deploy a bailout bag and this and that, but I tell you how it helped was that mental aspect. And this is, as an instructor, as an officer over the years, it's something I have preached to my people that every call we should be combat ready. And every call you need to be mentally prepared to do what you got to do. So I think on the front end, it's fine that we go to an automatic fire alarm with an engine and a truck, and I'm telling guys, hey, full gear, SCBA on, ready to go to work, tools in hand. Where's our water supply? Are we connecting to a sprinkler connect? Whatever. You know, run it as if it is a building fire. We're the first arriving engine. We're the first arriving special service. Whatever. So that mental aspect of that is huge, and I think when we're teaching safety and survival, and we're going over case studies, and we're talking about, how our brothers and sisters died at this fire or that fire, I think like with my event, and other ones, we've had other ones close by, Loudoun County, Prince William County, wherever. I think it's important to talk about how we survived, because it had been
Absolutely.
very, very easy. Yeah, I mean, it had been very easy for me, especially I didn't have a girlfriend at the time, wasn't married, just a single guy doing my thing, and it'd been very easy to say, yeah, no, I'm just going to sit here and wait for somebody to come get me. Well, okay, but number one, nobody's coming. Nobody knows you're trapped. Number two, wow, talk about being selfish because if you're not going to fight to the very end, man, you're putting other people's lives at risk to come get your ass. And yeah, definitely. If you're
100%.
trapped in, yeah, I mean, if you're trapped in debris, uh, you're unconscious of this and that, then obviously there's only so much you can do. But we don't need people who are going to lay down and take a knee on the 1 yard line, so to speak. Like I want my people to fight to the end. I know I'm gonna. I did in that situation, and I don't think I think if we're going to talk about being combat ready, then I think we need to talk about that mental aspect of being combat ready. We're here to fight. We're going to fight to the end. We're going to fight for our citizens until we can't fight anymore. We're going to fight for our brothers and sisters till we can't fight anymore. So yeah,
Absolutely. That's
you
something I
know,
try
I,
to add when we're teaching the safety and survival program now
yep,
is fight like
yeah,
hell and fight like your life depends on it because it does. And
yeah,
it's great.
absolutely.
It's great to do rapid intervention training, like going in and rescuing each other, but you have to have that survival mindset of there might not be anybody coming, and it might just be up to
Yeah,
me to get myself out. And
yeah,
you might be okay with letting yourself lay down and die, but something you have to understand is everybody else on that scene is not, and they're going to be coming to
right.
get you, and you are putting their
Yeah,
lives at risk too. So, yeah, absolutely,
yeah,
I
indeed.
100% agree with you. You got to be willing to fight like hell all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's a fact.
so you kind of answered this next question a little bit, but other than keeping that mindset, um, how else did it shape your career or any decisions that you've made after that on other calls, whether it was as a firefighter or an officer or even as a battalion chief?
That's a good question. That's a tough question to answer, Hank. So I think on the front end, it's I honestly felt lucky that it happened to me. And what I mean is, I don't mean to sound like I'm on some kind of death wish thing because I'm really not. But I, you know, I'm an instructor. I want to do things with my career. I wanted to go places in my career, and I knew that it's those kind of events and those kind of incidents that are things that you can use to either beat you down or build yourself up off of them. Um, it's kind of funny because uh, really it was secondary to the incident, but um, when I came to work in Frederick County, I recognized that hey man, it's not where I previously worked at, where I was a big fish in a small pond. Now all of a sudden I'm a small fish in a really big pond. So the only thing I wanted to do, like I wanted to make a name for myself and gain that trust and gain that respect from my coworkers, from my peers, from my superiors. Um, I wanted to earn it though. I didn't want to be that know it all. I didn't want to be the show off. Nothing like that. I just wanted opportunities to prove myself. Um, so this incident occurs, and immediately like I'm Mr. Popularity now, but so like I use that to my advantage to really like, look, man, I'm a survivor. I'm not a hero. I'm a survivor. Um, I knew that I now had basically a golden ticket to use that if I was teaching this material. Now I brought that much more credibility to it, or I brought that first person, first hand knowledge and experience of that kind of event happening. So whether it was a discussion about fire behavior or fire dynamics, or having that right mental mindset to overcoming that kind of situation, that I could use that to my advantage. Um, Same thing as an officer, as a leader. I can remember um, the night of the Ball Road fire, and for those of you who don't know who may be seeing this at a later date in time, we lost a brother at a fire just a few years ago. Um, Trapped, fell into a basement, and subsequently died as a result of his injuries. Um, I can remember that night. I came into work as soon as I found out we had a brother trapped. Um, went to my station. A lot of off-duty guys would come in, report to work at various stations, and once we found out that he had passed, it was pretty somber there at the firehouse. And I remember there was about 8 or 9 of us out in the apparatus bay, and I was at truck 4 at the time. And I remember somebody said, "Man, I can't imagine what he was thinking." And I'm like, "Well, funny story. I can tell you exactly what he was thinking. I can tell you exactly how he thought, because I was in that situation." So again, um, and not to brag, not because the story's not about me. It's about what we learn from it, what we do with that information, or how we use or how we apply that knowledge. And again, it was like I had that golden ticket to, to put that out there. Now, obviously, with the Ball Road incident, our focus became, turned into the investigation, the after action report, and a lot of those guys and girls who were involved in that gave, presentations, which absolutely I think that we should have. We should, our recruits should be educated in that. Our officers should be educated in that, and not just the mechanical aspect of this unit did this and this unit did that and the RIT team did this, but also that, again, that mental aspect of, okay, what are you prepared to do to keep this from happening? And again, I think it's also important that we share the survivors' stories, whether it's survivors from, the Ball Road incident, who, to this day, I'm sure still suffer with the, I should have done this or that, could have done this or whatever. But also survivors like me, or other folks who've been in that situation. I tell you, for me personally as an officer, it definitely makes our training and how we train more important. We're not, again, not throwing anybody under the bus, but as well as I do, we got officers that they're out there, they're doing training, but are they really doing training? Like, are we just doing something to say we did something, to put something in the log book, or are we doing something that somebody's going to benefit from and it's going to be worthwhile? You know, so I kind of wish on one hand that it was a situation where I had more skills to use or more time to use skills, but my that incident just didn't allow for that. So
What is your biggest takeaway or your biggest lesson for those listening that they can learn from your incident? What is the one thing, if you want people to remember one thing about this incident to learn from it, what would it be?
I think again it goes back to that mental aspect. I know, for the last couple years now, mental health. We hear mental all the time. But to me, I tie that back to that whole combat ready mentality. There's so many people with podcasts and they talk about that, and I think they're on the right track when they bring it up, whether it's Chief Martin, Chief Lee, Chief Goldfeder, whatever. Um, but I think that for our people, our officers, or I'm saying our, it's not just Frederick County, obviously, but if you want to be a captain, you want to be a lieutenant, you want to be a good firefighter, you want to be that person that gets things done, then your mind's got to be right. This isn't, when you career volunteers, if you're going to the firehouse, whether it's to work, hang out, work a bingo, whatever the case may be, and you're planning on taking a call, then you've got to have your mind in the right place. We're not just putting in time to go up and down the street with the ding ding and woo woo going. We're going to battle. We are going to war. And I think that if we are not mentally on board with that, we are doing ourselves and our family a disservice. We're doing our brothers and sisters a disservice. And most importantly, we're doing the citizens that we swore to protect a disservice. So our minds have got to be right. Um, don't, if there's some type of skill that you're uncomfortable with, whether it's climbing ladders, throwing ladders, advancing hose lines, working with your SCBA, to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You're not going to get any better if you ignore it. If you don't like throwing ladders, guess what? You're not going to get any better at it. You're not going to get comfortable at it until you get your ass out there and go throw ladders. If you're uncomfortable with heights, you're not going to get comfortable sitting on the couch watching a YouTube video on it. You're only going to get comfortable by going out there and climbing the damn ladder. You know? And I think that's the biggest thing. I think we have a lot of people who talk a big show, they come off like they've been fighting fires for 30 years in the Bronx, and the reality is it's like, yeah, no, you really aren't. So you got to have the right mental aspect, and if you don't, then you're doing us a disservice.
I love that. All right, what's your favorite skill to train on in fire service?
Oh
You
man,
had to pick one that we go out there right now and do. What are you gonna
ah man, you're killing me. There's so many. I mean, like, um, there, there's days where I'll get involved. I'll get myself talked into doing something for training, and it's like, man, I don't want to do this today. I'd rather be doing that. Um, I like um, I like the aspect of like the practical rescue kind of stuff where it crosses paths with like a lot of our firefighter safety and survival skills, like packaging the down firefighter, figuring out creative ways to get them out of the building, like the Pittsburgh drill, bring some of that to light. Uh, I like I like giving a scenario and give certain parameters and then watch our people figure it out and see what they can come up with and then talk about it. Um, watching people like, hey, I'm gonna use this ladder as a high point and we're gonna put a directional, we're gonna do this and we're gonna package this and we're gonna I really like that kind of thing. Uh, but I can't say. I guess if I had to say a favorite, it'd be those kind of skills where that practical rescue application kind of stuff crosses paths with our safety and survival skills. That right there, that gray area, so to speak.
do? Yeah,
Gets people
yeah,
thinking,
yeah. That's great.
makes them think.
Cool, Chief Schultz. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your story. Um, I think there's a lot of great takeaways from it, and I hope the people listening learn something, and hopefully they don't have to apply it in the future. But if they do, hopefully it's something that'll benefit them. So thank you very much.
Hank, been my pleasure to be here. It's my honor to see the things you're doing in the fire service, and I think this podcast is a great opportunity to get information out there as a teaching platform, and hope good things for you, pal, and best of luck. I will talk to you soon.
All right, I'm gonna turn this off. Don't go anywhere.
Okay.